Welcome back to the left of Old North, where we bring progressive insight to North Carolina politics to the best of our ability. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm CJ.
And today, we're sitting down with somebody who's actually been in the thick of it. The Honorable Chaz Beasley. Chaz represented House District 92 in the North Carolina General Assembly, serving part of Mecklenburg County during a time of major growth and political transformation. A Harvard and Georgetown Law graduate, he brought a fresh, policy-driven voice to Raleigh, and he didn't stop there. Because in 2020, Chaz ran statewide for lieutenant governor, bringing attention to issues like economic mobility, education equity, and justice reform, all with a focus on building a North Carolina that works for everyone, not just for those in power. And today we're going to talk to him a little bit about his time in the legislature, some lessons from running a statewide campaign, what the future looks like for Democrats in our state, and how you juggle all that while being both an attorney and a dad. Chaz Beasley, welcome to the show.
Adrian, CJ, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure for us. We're that you are our first either former or current representative that has been on the show. So big props to you on that. Congratulations.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, when you're retired like me, an old man in a rocking chair, you got a lot of time to talk to the people. So
that's exactly how it went down. We went up the drive, up to the porch. He was sitting there on the rocking chair, and it's like, what do you want?
Yep. It's like Stewie and Family Guy when he's rocking. He's like, it's good to have land.
Well, Chaz, we definitely have a lot of questions for you, just because you're what, 38, 39. Maybe I missed a birthday, but you've done a lot.
Nope, 39.
39. You've done a lot in that time. And I feel like that's a bit of an understatement. So it's cool to see somebody under 50 accomplish as much as you have, and also just putting your neck out there, I think, is something that we definitely give people props for on the show, even if like in 2020 there was somebody else that was chosen in the primary for lieutenant governor. So just want to thank you there as well.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, it really has been the honor of my lifetime to be able to serve, and the good thing is, having not been in elected office for the past 4 years, I can tell you, not only is there life after politics, but there's a lot of work to do that doesn't require you to have honorable.
Right. Yeah. And in those 4 years, do you miss it at all?
I definitely would say that the fact that you have a job where the decisions that you make directly impact people's lives for the better or for the worse, I think that's a tremendous responsibility. And you never have to wonder when you finish a day at work in the legislature whether you made an impact. It may have been small, may have been, you giving it the old college try, but it not really turning out well, or it could be great. But that type of fulfillment is something that a lot of people never have the opportunity to sense. So I feel very honored to be able to do it. But I also know, to everything there's a season, and I'm very happy to be able to do the things that I've been able to do in this season of my life.
So, and this might seem like kind of a quote, basic kind of question, but for those, listeners who might not know, what exactly did your kind of day-to-day at the General Assembly look like? Like Adrian said, you're the first current or former member that we've had, so it might be a good time to kind of educate the audience.
Yeah. So the typical day at the legislature is not typical, right? There's just no telling what the day is going to bring when you're up there. Some days you think, oh, this is going to be really calm, we're going to be in, we're going to be out. And then it ends up being super long. There are some days where you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be the longest day ever. And then ends up being pretty non-controversial, and people come in, they come out, they're done. But I would say that most weeks are I'd say it's easier to describe a week in the legislature than it is to describe a day in the legislature. Wow. And the reason I say that is because generally you can assume that your busiest days are going to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You can generally assume you're going to be coming up there on a Monday and leaving on a Thursday. And you can basically assume that as the session goes along, each week gets progressively more packed until you hit what's known as crossover, where basically bills have to cross over from one house to the other. They have to be passed by one house to make it to the other house, or else they die, and vice versa.
Right.
And then it kind of calms down, and then each week it gets busier and busier and busier to get to the budget, and then it calms down until you get to the budget, and then the budget's this crazy week. So I would say it's a lot harder to plan your day at the legislature than it is to plan your week at the legislature.
Interesting. Now, and I know that like the calendar is just, it has to always be changing, especially when like somebody has to push back committee meetings and things like that. So like, do you, bit of a weird, maybe out of left field kind of question. Do you feel like that's kind of by design, or is it just like to err as human on that?
Yeah, it's definitely by design. I think that if the legislature, I'll speak for the House, which is the one that I was in. If you wanted the House to have a more regular, predictable schedule, and you're in leadership in the House, you can totally do it. Now, when you're in the minority, you can't, right? You can't control the calendar.
Right.
But there's no reason why there can't be more predictability. But the lack of predictability makes it easier to, especially in a legislature where you're on the cusp of something, you're on the cusp of supermajority or on the cusp of a majority. You can kind of keep people on their toes and take advantage of the fact that people, also have lives. And so they may have to, go to this or go to that. I have a doctor's appointment. I got to pick my kids up. And so they can kind of use that to take advantage of the fact that somebody is missing on a crucial vote, count the people in the room, and then call a vote, right? So, no, there are a lot of things about the legislature that make it very difficult for, just your everyday person to serve. And the crazy calendar is one of them, but it's definitely by design. Can you control the chaos completely? No. I mean, in any job, you're going to have to be nimble in some sense, but it's definitely more on the side of let's keep things a lot of unpredictable because there's political advantage to that.
Right. So do you think that maybe then this might be a bit more conspiracy brained, but do you think that the Republican majority has maybe like an internal calendar that they don't share with everybody else?
That's not conspiracy. The majority caucus always knows more about what's going on in the minority caucus, always. And yeah, they take advantage of that, right? If you're ahead in the game, what's going on in your huddle probably matters a little bit more than what's going on in the other huddle. Right. So yeah, they definitely know more about kind of what the game plan is and what the schedule looks like. And if they don't think they're going to have, some of their folks there, they're definitely going to, adjust their calendar accordingly because they're going to say, oh, such and such can't be here. So yeah, no, that's not conspiracy. That's just them taking advantage of the fact that they run a show.
This is just strategy.
Yeah, it definitely is.
You gotta love that they, try to play games instead of actually, helping people. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely frustrating. And my thing is, I love when people make the argument that like, oh, well, the Democrats did thus and so when they were in power. I'm like, number one, that was, they've been in the majority since basically 2011. Mm-hmm. So we've now been at this for a decade and a half. At some point, you got to start actually having conversations about what you think is best for the state and not keep trying to not continuing to try to do this whole, well, y'all did it, so we're going to do it too stuff like that. Like it's been almost 15 years that y'all been running the show. The Democrats did this, so we're going to do it too. Like, be your own person. People who are in leadership really need to just be their own person. Like, they can't always live through the lens of, what Democrats did a decade and a half ago. And if you really think that something needs to change, then change it. If you think something needs to be better in the legislature, make it better. You've had 15 years, those wounds are not still fresh. So why are you still, putting the entire state at a disadvantage because you refuse to make the changes that need to be made to actually have, we want to have a citizen legislature. Cool, let's have a citizen legislature. Make it so that citizens can actually serve.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Short of absolute like miracle, divine intervention type of thing, what do you think it would take for the Republican leadership to stop playing this kind of blame game and, being stuck 15 years in the past?
Oh, it's going to take either looking like Democrats are in a position to materially eat into the majority that they have or get to a majority. Now, some people, I know this is a completely different topic, but I think it needs to be said. You have some people that treat politics as though it's like physics, right? That there are just these laws of political gravity and you can't change it and there's no way to change it. Let's take a flashback back to 2004, which is the first presidential election I could vote in. You had George Bush win re-election, and everybody thought, and he won re-election with a strong popular vote number. And so a lot of people were like, man, Democrats are just in trouble, man. We're not. And in 2006, Democrats had a phenomenal year. In 2008, we had Barack Obama elected. So I'm just not one of these people who believes that in politics, that there are just these immutable facts, like things have to happen a certain way, and that it's just impossible for Democrats to ever get back to the majority ever. Like history doesn't bear that out. And also there's this, politicians love sports analogies, right? But I'm gonna use one anyway because it needs to be said.
They blend so well. So
I know, right? In football, I remember when we used to play football, they used to always say the only thing prevent defense does is prevent you from winning the game. If you try not to lose, you will put yourself in a position to lose. You might not lose, you might actually squeak it out, but you got to play aggressive, right? And I think that a lot of people just assume that like Democrats are just doomed all the time. And those are the times when, especially in politics, you tend to overplay your hand. And that's when you start seeing, yourself get knocked on your tail, frankly. And that can definitely happen with this legislature. I would not bank on the Republicans just forever and ever running the show. Now, if they continue to be able to draw the lines every 10 years, that's a huge advantage, right, that you can't deny. Right. And sometimes, depending on how they do it, an unfair one. But still doesn't mean that we should just pretend like, oh, yeah, we're just doomed for another 10 years. Let's all go home. I don't think that's the right approach.
No, I think we wholeheartedly agree. And I'll flip the page one more. You brought up 2006 and 2008, and let's not forget that in 2010, the Tea Party movement was nationwide and led to a multitude of state legislatures and even Congress swinging to the right. So politics is very fluid. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I think you bring up an interesting point too, that because it's not set in stone, there are not these immutable characteristics in both the electorate and in politicians. Things are going to change whether the majority likes it or not, and they should be worried that there's, whether it's on the horizon, near or far, that change is going to be at their doorstep, and it depends entirely on them as to whether they're going to be ready for it or not. And that leads me into my question for you with both your time in the legislature and as just a member of the Democratic Party in general. Do you think that the General Assembly has become, the Democratic side of the General Assembly has become more reactionary because of the way that the General Assembly operates underneath the Republican supermajority before majority now? Or do you think that perhaps the Democratic Party has not quite met the moment? What is the gap here that needs to be filled?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two things that I saw while I was in there that are definitely playing themselves out. Number one, you definitely saw that once the Republicans got back into the majority, they did that by beating a lot of conservative Democrats in pretty conservative seats, right? North Carolina's Democratic Party is not some like mad liberal, completely like all about national progressive issues type party. It's never been that, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the people who got beat in 2010, in the year that you were talking about, were a lot of those Democrats that a lot of them had a good amount of power, and they were pretty conservative. Well, that left kind of this group of Democrats that were used to being in power, also pretty conservative, in their mind, pretty pragmatic, but there weren't a large number of them, and that ended up leaving a lot of Democrats that are from like more of the cities that were a lot of times more to the left than the more rural Democrats that were more conservative. And so basically that ended up creating a dynamic where you had the people who used to run the show when the show was being run by Democrats, and then you had people that really had never been running the show that now felt like they could actually, kind of affect the direction of the caucus itself.
Right.
And what you've seen is, of course, the conservatives have shrunk, especially once the lines are drawn. They were drawn to shrink, right? And more of the party has become more and more to the left because they're coming from places where that's their electorate. So you end up now, and then you add that number shrinking, but then you add that on top of the fact that the Republicans have drawn the lines to get them pretty close to supermajorities, if not over supermajorities. Mm-hmm. So that means that this shrinking number of people also has an increasing amount of power outside the caucus, when inside the caucus, their numbers and their voice is frankly becoming smaller and smaller because they have fewer and fewer of them, right? So you have that tension that plays out in public as like, oh, it's a Democrats and a Rip. It's really not. It's really kind of a change that has happened over the last 15 years in kind of an inevitable change. But it plays itself out. It's almost like it's, in other words, it's more like it's a feature, not a bug.
Sure. Yeah.
Because guess what? If the Republicans had 65 seats, no disrespect to the more, conservative members of the Democratic caucus, mm-hmm. but they would have zero power because they would have no power within the caucus because they'd have too few people. They'd have no power outside the caucus because the Republicans wouldn't need them because they're nowhere close to majority. It really is a particular feature of the fact that the Republicans have drawn themselves into situations where they think they should be getting supermajorities, and they just can't quite get there without some sort of lucky break. Somebody switches, somebody changes parties, somebody blows a race because they got caught napping. Like, they really haven't been able to get themselves over that hump. But if the Democrats can consolidate and get some wins in some districts that are coming our way, that situation will resolve itself.
Yeah, it's almost a prison of their own making because they have drawn themselves into a supermajority, or at current time, a majority inching at the edge of a supermajority, but mm-hmm. not quite enough to actually deny the fact that this state votes pretty 50-50, not always, but pretty close most of the time, especially in recent years.
Right. And look, I don't know if I'm breaking any news on your podcast, but if the Republicans could ignore all the Democrats, some of them would still try to create, relationships across the aisle. But a good number of the ones that are in leadership right now, if they could ignore the party completely, they would gladly do that, right? Let's not pretend. Let's not pretend like they're. I definitely worked with some people who are still there, who very much had that old school mentality and very much did try to build relationships across the aisle. You knew where we could agree and you knew where we couldn't, and it was all good. But there are some that are like, if the legislature was 120 House Republicans and 50 Senate Republicans, they'd be cool with that. There are some people who believe that. That would be terrible for North Carolina. It's not. It would be good for North Carolina to be
maybe.
So don't get it twisted. When they come to y'all, Democratic members in the House and the Senate, they're doing it because they need the numbers. They have a Democratic governor who can veto their stuff and whose veto can be sustained. So let's be real here. Don't get it twisted.
So CJ, I see that you have a question on the tip of your tongue, but I have to interject real quick to ask. So Chaz, with this change in the leadership, kind of like you're talking about that, maybe they once were willing to work across the aisle, not so much anymore. Do you see that same trend continuing with the new Speaker of the House, Destin Hall? We've seen a little bit of how he operates in the General Assembly, but not so much long term. You were in the General Assembly when Representative Tim Moore was Speaker, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what that was like, and then also what you foresee with this new Speaker taking over things.
Yeah, so Destin and I actually came into the legislature at the exact same time, same class, and we're actually around the same age, believe it or not. So a lot of overlap in our careers. I think that Destin is much more of a true believer than Tim Moore. And
can you expand upon that? What do you mean by true believer?
Yeah. So I think that Destin very much came up at a time when Republicans ran the show. He's actually from one county over from where I grew up. So he's from I'm from a pretty red area too, Catawba County. I was born in Iredell County, lived in Alexander County and Catawba County, literally all three counties, Trump 60 plus. So I learned how to argue early when it came to politics.
And I'm sure that helped you in law school too.
It definitely did. I'm sure it drives my wife crazy sometimes, but she's got the patience of a saint. But so he's not like, he didn't grow up or come up in the legislature like a Tim Moore or even like a Tom Tillis, frankly, where they had to know how to make deals to actually get things done. He's much more the kind of person that, he's totally cool with running the controversial bills. He's totally cool with getting his caucus in line, making sure people are not breaking. Like he's got but when I say he's a true believer, what I mean is like he's not. There are some people who are I would say much more like I'm willing to kind of see both sides. Like I think he's a conservative through and through, and I think he would probably agree with me that he's a conservative through and through. I think that he probably, he was like, please say that louder. But I think that if he thinks that a number that he can get to 72 on a number, but it's something that he doesn't like, I think he's gonna try to figure out a way to not do that thing and figure out another way to get to 72. And so it's different styles. I think that style also, as I was talking about earlier, puts you in much more of a position to overplay your hand. I think that if you are the type to run a caucus and to run a house where you can kind of sort of see both sides, because you can see both sides, you're less likely to be blindsided. You're less likely to see like political blowback. Because you can kind of see around the corner. If you ain't looking around the corner because you're like, I don't care what's around the corner, that's how you end up in situations where where frankly Democrats do better in 2026 than people give them credit for.
Right, running around saying I'm in charge and just changing as much as you can. There's definitely going to be some blowback if you're not paying attention to your lefts and rights. Yeah,
because the fact of the matter is, I say this as somebody who knows exactly what type of deep values I have. The mark of political wisdom, and this goes for our side too. In fact, I think it goes to our side more so. The mark of political wisdom is this statement: I believe X, but I know a lot of people might disagree with. That is the mark of political wisdom. The reason that we are in the state that we are in right now nationally is because we have a lot of people in the White House who believe that the wild things they believe are reality and that people agree with them. That is why we are in the state we're in. And the reason why North Carolina is actually in a pretty good position is because we kind of had to, by will of the voters, frankly, we've had to have situations where, the Republicans in the legislature wanted to do something, but they had to get past Governor Cooper's veto and they couldn't do it. Well, too bad, right? That has kind of kept our state from veering too far to one side because you can't. But right now we have people in the White House who can just do wild stuff, like irresponsible stuff that we shouldn't be scared to call out as wild and irresponsible and like nobody has any business doing it. We should be willing to say that. But they can do that because they surround themselves with people who not only don't look around the corner, they say there is no corner. All right? They say the corner doesn't exist. They say the corner is a deep state conspiracy. That's how you get into trouble. That's how you have a president who literally in his first term had more Americans thinking he was strong on the economy. And literally in the first 100 days, he already has a higher disapproval rating on the economy than approval. Didn't happen for a lot of his first 4 years. Say what you want to say about Donald Trump, but voters thought he was good on the economy because he's a businessman. He does deals.
Yeah.
They don't think that now because he made a big, huge mistake on this whole tariff stuff, which we should call him out on.
And then double down.
That's a prime example.
Right.
And then double down. And then triple down. And then pretended like everybody else is crazy because they don't see what we've known for literally 100 years. If you try and slap big tariffs on stuff, all you're doing is multiplying the price of stuff, which ain't good for the economy. Also, let's talk about what happens when it comes to these tariffs. I know that you were asking me about the legislature, but I want to make sure we know how to talk about these kind of things on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
All right, so your goal with tariffs, I want to make things more expensive because then people will take their factories from overseas, they'll bring them back here, they'll build factories here. Right? They'll build their stuff here. All right. Where are you going to get the stuff to build those factories?
Exactly. I think I actually...
We talked about this.
Yeah, no, I think I actually mentioned that a couple episodes ago. If the whole point of the tariffs is to increase domestic manufacturing and production and whatnot, you still got to get the stuff from somewhere. So if the whole idea is like an auto plant in Detroit up and running again, that's going to take steel, it's going to take aluminum, goods, all this stuff.
Now, CJ, I have a proposal for you, and Chaz, you can jump on this too. And I think this is going to be great. It's going to be a huge leap. We're going to go forward with it. We're going to have people make steel in their backyard. Millions of citizens making steel in their backyard. It'll be a great leap forward. It's going to work so well for everybody.
So we're doing like victory gardens, but for like, good, like metal and whatnot.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure that's just the entire show Forged in Fire. Like I watched that all the time. It's pretty much that whole thing.
I like it. Yeah, no, we did talk about this because it was something that when it was first happening, it kind of struck us as like, okay, but the logic isn't even sound. And I think Americans, even if you don't really understand tariffs, even if you don't really understand the economy as broad as a subject as it is, that's fine if you don't. But like, don't believe this guy who's telling you that tariffs are just going to make us richer somehow. It's just going to work, guys. Right. I mean, it'll make him richer. It'll make corporations richer, and on the back end,
right?
And
it might. I mean, well, the fact of the matter is, a lot of times it might actually hurt corporations too, because here's the thing that we have to make sure that we're doing sometimes, right? As I used to say when I was growing up, don't use a $10 word when a $2 word will do, right? All that tariffs are is somebody basically saying, I'm going to make whatever you bring in cost a lot more because I'm going to slap more taxes on it. And when you do what they did, which is where you slapped a bunch of taxes on stuff fast, what you're doing is basically saying to people, all the stuff you're going to get is going to be more expensive. And if you're a trucker, it's going to hit distribution. Mm-hmm. So if you work in a warehouse, guess what? People ain't going to be buying as much stuff if now what they're buying costs twice as much. You don't have to be, PhD, Nobel Prize winning economist to know that if you double the price of a refrigerator, people are going to buy less refrigerator, right?
Right.
And if people are buying less refrigerators, they're going to need less truck drivers to drive them around, and there's going to be a lot more empty warehouses, right? And people talk about, oh, well, like we were talking about before, well, in a few years, they'll move everything over. You know, in the words of Warren Buffett, who apparently is a communist to some of these people, he's like not. Warren Buffett said
he's a class traitor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Warren Buffett said the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. In other words, the market can do crazy stuff and bankrupt your tail before it finally like, oh, we need to fix things. Like, so you need to understand, if you are a person who considers themselves working class, you are going to get hit hardest by tariffs. I don't care who you are going to get hit hardest by tariffs, because if your car breaks down, you can't go to your mechanic and say, I know my part is going to cost twice as much now, and you have to get it from somewhere, but can I give you the old price? They're going to say no. Yeah. Unless they're doing you a solid, unless, like, you know, if you're going to your cousin or something, maybe they can do it. They cut you a break, but they can't do that with everybody, or they're going to be the ones that are going to go bankrupt. So we gotta start calling this stuff out. Like, some of this stuff, I think this drove me crazy when we first started talking about tariffs. People were so scared to say, yo, this is a bad idea, because they were like, well, you know, we need to understand where he's coming from. No, we don't, because this is not the way to bring jobs back to the United States. You bring jobs back to the United States by making more of them in things that we do better, right? If a country wants to send us olives and we want to send them fighter jets, that's a good trade, all right? Like, if that means we're going to make more, if we're going to make more like technology and they're going to send us the parts, but we get the benefit of the entire technology, that's a good trade. We have to be willing to call these things like we see it. But sometimes we are so scared that somebody's going to say that we're out of touch somehow, that we don't just call it like it is. Like, this is bad stuff for us.
No, agreed. And so, you know, when it comes to like calling, you know, not just this whole tariff stuff out, but just kind of, let's say, the awful Republican policies, and going back a few minutes, you know, calling out the kind of, I guess, extremism, or, you know, the true believer aspect of people like Destin Hall and people in the NC General Assembly Republican Party. Like, how do you see, or what do you think the Democratic Party needs to do on messaging? How do you think the best way to go about this would be?
I think, yeah, sorry about that. But I think that we've got to make sure people understand that what happens in Raleigh affects them a lot more than what happens in Washington. And we also have to be willing to tell people in simple terms, not in super complex, you know, super academic terms, what's happening in Raleigh, right? We sometimes get in our own way because we don't know who our audience is. And no disrespect, but I appreciate everyone that donates to campaigns. It's important that we have people who donate to campaigns, but sometimes our audience is not donors. Okay. Sometimes our audience is people who are just living their lives. They don't pay attention to politics all the time. They don't watch MSNBC every night. They are people who are just living their lives, and they might not even know what's going on in Raleigh. So we have to make sure that we are speaking to people, not that we're dumbing things down for people. That's not that we're condescending to people, but that we're telling people in a way that they can understand why this stuff matters. I think sometimes we have gotten so, like, it's almost like we sometimes develop our own language on our side, right? Where we say things and there are certain ways that certain things have to be said. And it's totally fine to know that. But if you're knocking on somebody's door and they're like, why should I care what's going on in Raleigh? And you say, well, do you care that they might be throwing out your ballot? Do you care if they're throwing out ballots for literally for people who are in the military right now? That's what they're trying to do because they want to win. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the kind of thing, like, we need to say it like that. We don't need to say, I'll give you another example. It's a national example, but I think it's an important one. We have people who are saying things like, the rendition of a person who was legally in the United States is highly concerning to me because it violates our fundamental principles of due process. Okay, cool. Well, I'm a lawyer. I understand exactly what you said, and I agree. But if I'm talking to my grandma, I'm not going to talk to her about that because she may not understand that. And she's a reliable Democratic voter, votes in every primary and general. But she doesn't know what I just said.
There is definitely a median voter out there that would just go, huh?
Yeah. Right. If you say personally, if you say to somebody, you say, look, personally, I think that before you get kicked out the country, you should be able to say in front of a judge, here's why I shouldn't be kicked out of the country. And if the judge says you should stay, they shouldn't say, well, we're kicking you out anyway. Like, that's how you convey the issue of the problem with due process and rendition, right? People don't know what those words mean. And people say things like, oh, well, you think voters are dumb. No, I think voters don't pay as much attention to this. They don't live this. This is not their thing. And so you want to be able to convey complex issues to people in a way they can get it. Because if you say to somebody, do you think you should be able to be kicked out of the country? And if a judge says, no, actually you should stay, the government should be able to say, no, actually we're going to kick you out anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody gets that.
Bring it back to big government. See?
Yeah, that's a crazy. It's so crazy. Like people who are literally like, I just don't want there to be death panels. The same people are now like, yeah, cool, like kick them out because we're talking about due process instead of talking about kicking people out of the country without having their day in court. That is a much easier way to say the same thing. So that's the kind of messaging stuff that I think where we defeat ourselves, frankly.
So I think that's Sorry, CJ.
So no, you're good. So let me ask you this. So I completely agree with what you said. I think we've kind of said something along the lines on here before, or at least Adrian have talked about it before.
I called it meeting people where they're at, both mentally and geographically.
Yeah, but so that is once you kind of get their attention, right? So I think one of the biggest problems we have is just starting that conversation to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Because most people, they're busy with their day-to-day lives. If they are paying attention to anything on the news, anything political, it is basically solely, on the federal level. I mean, I personally am an example of this. I mean, I did not pay attention to state level politics until I was in college and was forced to take a North Carolina politics class.
Yeah.
Right. Like it wasn't, quote, sexy, so to say. It wasn't interesting. And so I was a political science major, right? So I was a nerd. So how do you think we get that start going?
Yeah.
Because we can have those conversations, but we have to instigate them somehow.
Yeah. So I think that it's all about, to your point, it's all about the approach. If you say to somebody, let's have a conversation about politics right now, their eyes are going to glaze over. But these same people, I guarantee you have an opinion. All right. I guarantee it. One of the things we have to do, number one, is we got to start knocking on doors that are not just people who already agree with us. All right. Because if you knock on some doors of some people that are kind of in the middle, you're going to have some conversations that you might not have with people who already agree with you. So part of it is literally having fewer. So we have a lot of events where we say, come to me and talk to me. And those are important. I'm not saying that they're not. But I think if you're in the state legislature, if you're going to have 2 hours of office hours in your district, you also probably need to have 2 hours where you go knock on doors. All right. Because if 20 people come to your office hours in 2 hours, that's a good number. But if you knock on doors in a pretty lot of people in a neighborhood, you'll probably be able to knock on about 45-ish, 50 doors in that same hour and probably talk to 14 people. So literally if you did 3 hours, you're talking to 21 people, most likely 18, 21 people. So you're literally, if you spend, for the 2 hours that you spent with office hours of people coming to you, if you had 20 people show up, that's a pretty good showing. If you spent 3 hours knocking on doors, you probably talked to the same number of people, and you probably would get a perspective that you would probably not get from people who are taking the initiative to go and talk to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying do one rather than the other. I'm saying do both, right?
Sure.
Make time for both. So yeah.
That's what I like to call campaign math.
Yeah.
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 Now, before we go, I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
One is anything on the horizon for Chaz Beasley in terms of running for something, maybe throwing your hat in the ring again at some point.
Yeah, so I've gotten this question a few times.
Oh, I'm sure you
have. I am not the type of person who needs to be in somebody's political office in order to do the work, or to be in somebody's political office because I feel like part of my identity is missing because I'm not in somebody's office. Like, I'm not that person. No opportunities have presented themselves that makes me want to just jump right in. I love the work that I'm doing. I love, being at home with my wife and my baby every night. I really love the life that I'm living right now. I just am not one of these people who just needs to be in office to be somebody. Like, that's just not me. If an opportunity presents itself, we'll see. But right now, no, I'm not running for anything. I'm not looking at anything. I'm not angling for anything. I just think that the work is important enough that, you got to do the work regardless of whether or not you're at the front of the line or the back. And I think there are definitely some people who take a different approach. I think there's some people that are like, if I'm not in somebody's political office, like, who am I? That ain't me, though. I'm not that guy.
That's a very, I think it's a healthy reluctance, a very wholesome response, honestly.
Yeah.
And then,
appreciate that.
Yeah. Final question that we ask pretty much all of our guests. What is your go-to cookout menu order?
Oh, okay. So, 2 hot dogs, chili and mustard on both, chicken nuggets with the extra protein, which is what I like to tell myself. Complete lie. Doing so. Fries, Cajun seasoning, and huge tea, sweet tea. That's definitely my tray. I will say that if I'm really not trying to be productive at all, I might switch out the huge tea for a shake or a cheer one float. But if I do that, I know I'm done for the day. I am not getting anything done.
Was that a Republican strategy? Was to bring Representative Chaz Beasley, a Coke float, a Pepsi, or a cheer wine float? He'll be out for the rest of the day.
Exactly. It's like Samson cutting his hair. That's definitely my kryptonite is the cheer wine flow. No, I know myself well enough at this stage in my life. You gotta balance it out a little bit when it comes to the shakes at cookout, because those things are huge, and you can definitely finish them.
I think what I love is we've had some people they've had to think about it for half a second or so.
Yeah,
you had your answer ready to go. I love that.
Is that a good thing, though?
No, you can tell you've had to, because man, those cookout people are fast. They're like, what do you want? So you've definitely had to order this a few times.
Oh yeah. No, I think I have it memorized, and I'm gonna. I think my wife will probably listen to this podcast, so just tell me what minute that question comes up, and I'll turn it off because I'm like, oh, that's it. She's got no bunch of housekeeping stuff at the end, because I'm telling you, she has done God's work when it comes to getting my diet right, because oh man, that legislative diet, boy, it'll get you. So I've come a long way.
Well, Chaz, tell you what, as a favor to you, I will upload 2 versions of this, one with the cookout order cut out, but I'm going to leave the Yale part in. So that's the trade-off. Okay, buddy? Chaz Beasley, the Honorable Chaz Beasley, it has been a pleasure to talk to you today. Do you have anything you want to plug, or any cause that you want to tell people about before we go?
Yeah. No, definitely want to tell you guys, appreciate the fact that y'all are doing this. I would definitely put in a plug to all my fellow legislators. Come on this podcast. I don't want to be the only one. I want to be the first, but not the last. And also, just remember the people out in Western North Carolina. My grandmother was one of those people who was out there when Helene hit. Don't forget about those people. They still need us. So keep them top of mind. Especially when you start getting those tax refund checks and you're looking for a charitable cause, send a little bit out to the 828.
Love it. Well, Chaz, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and we were really lucky to get Chaz on the podcast. I thought it was a really good conversation.
Oh no, it was fantastic. I mean, he had a lot of great things to say, and I'm kind of, I'm glad we had him on there. It made me feel good that some of his concerns, some of his views were similar in the same vein as ones we've had ourselves on here in previous episodes. So that's nice.
It was a good idea to send him that script beforehand. I think I definitely praise you for that. Good thinking on your part.
Thank you. Yeah, the contract I had to write up was a little tricky, but he signed it in blood and whatnot, so we're good.
Well,
for any Republicans listening, I swear to God, this is not real. We are not the deep state. Don't worry.
That's exactly what the deep state would say. and like when we talk about just politics in general, you always got to think like somebody at some point is going to dig back through these and try to find something, anything. And to you, intern or page or legislative aide that is listening to this, are you doing okay? The year's 2032, Republicans are not doing so well right now, or maybe they're doing great, but they're also still crazy. Are you okay? I hope your mental health is, doing well. And I hope you are, skimming a little bit off the top from your Republican counterparts. Get that bag while you can. You don't have to report us. It's okay. Just tell them you found nothing. All right. I think that covered our bases. Yeah, I think that covered our bases. I think we're good now. So now we can get to the bullshit of the week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So this is the nature of recording a topical podcast, CJ. This is the line that we've chosen for ourselves.
Yep.
Things change within hours of hitting that record and submit button.
Yep. Yeah, so last week we were talking about the whole power grab by Republicans to give Dave Bullsh, the North Carolina State Auditor, the power to oversee the State Board of Elections. We were talking last week about how the Court of Appeals had stopped that in its tracks. Right. Today it's currently, as we are recording this, May 1st. Mm-hmm. And ABC11.com, you can see the headline, NC Auditor names elections board members after judges let law stand during appeals. So, as we kind of mentioned last episode, this got sent to the appeals court. And, they said, you can go through with this power grab and, completely destroy years of settled law and precedents and all that stuff, and
logic.
Really just kind of take North Carolina back a few more steps.
Because when I think elections and when I think keeping them in the hands of people who are allied to the small d democratic values that we hold dear in this country, the first guy that I think of to manage them is the money guy in the Council of State, is the state auditor.
Definitely think about the guy who, as we said in the last episode, only switched parties recently and said he's only in this for Donald Trump. Definitely trust him with, as you put it, the small d democratic values. Yeah. Very trustworthy guy. Not at all going to fuck everything up.
No, definitely not a partisan hack. And I mean, obviously they had appointments ready to go as soon as this dropped. And this is something that I think, just as a quick aside, that if Democratic politicians, if you are not already doing this, where regardless of how things go, that you don't have a slate ready to go, the moment anything happens, learn from what Republicans are doing right now. Learn from what North Carolina Republicans are doing and learn from what national Republicans are doing, because the moment they get any kind of favorable ruling, they just go ahead and do it. They don't wait. Oh, we gotta wait and make sure it's legal. It's like, it's literally that moment. And this is very topical because, well, not super topical, but this is very topical in a way because it is about to be May the 4th and the Revenge of the Sith has been re-released to theaters, which is amazing. I am going to try to see it. I don't know if I'll be able to. But it's that moment in the first episode when he says,
all right, I see where you're going with this.
He says, but my lord, is that legal? I will make it legal. And I can't do Palpatine, so don't get me to try. All right, you pushed me to it. I will make it legal. There. And so we have this exact scenario right now is playing out where they made it legal to do what they're doing. Doesn't even matter that a previous court said that it's unconstitutional. It does not matter. And granted, yes, that is how the court system works. Not arguing that that's not how it should work, right? How dare I question the moral, the efficacy of our judicial system. I'm just saying it's a little bit bullshit.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I'm skimming through this ruling or through this article really quick. I'm about to pull up the ruling. But last I heard, they had not announced who the
Yeah, they
who
left
the judges were.
the judges unnamed in the ruling. Now we're looking
And
at trying to submit some kind of records request to figure out who the judges are. I completely understand that they are probably doing this to make sure that they are not subject to harassment. That is not the goal for us. It is purely academic to figure out which of these judges decided this was totally fine and decided, you know what, I'll make the decision, but we're not going to tell people who. we're not going to reveal who made this decision. Even though
definitely said,
we need to reiterate too that there are 12 Republican judges on the Court of Appeals. So
yep.
odds are this unanimous court decision did not include a Democrat.
Yeah. Now, I'm again on this article. So this says Bolliak appointed Republican members Stacey Ford Eggers, who served on the most recent board, former state senator Bob Rucho, and Francis DeLuca, who is the former president of a conservative think tank. Now, if you are from Western North Carolina, specifically from Boone, Watauga County, and the Eggers name sounds familiar, that's because this is the same family of Eggers that tried numerous times to get on-campus voting taken away from Appalachian State University. I personally, as an App alum, have a particular dislike for all things for Eggers and company.
I think,
and so
that's a completely reasonable way to feel.
Yeah. I should also say, during that time when I was at App, like, we sued and won many lawsuits because the courts were like, yeah, no, some of these things are absolutely insane. They're overreaching. They are an affront to small d Democratic values. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what, I'll be honest, I do not know the makeup of the appeals courts or anything like that at that time. This was like 2016, 2019-ish. I do not know the makeup of the appeals court, but I think it says a lot that nowadays, common sense legal victories aren't necessarily common.
Yeah.
I like to think that anyone who at least has a respect for the rule of law and for constitutionality and small d democracy, I like to think anyone who has that respect can see what is going on and see that, like, this was a partisan power grab and that it is a slap in the face to those values.
Mm-hmm. We have...
I like to think that anyway. Who knows?
No, I do too, but like, we do live in an age of hyperpartisanship, due in no small part to Trump, but also just the fallout from the Tea Party movement that still exists in ripples to this day. We have partisan judges that have seemingly made it their life's mission to just be as conservative as possible. Mm-hmm. Just like, let's push the bounds of what conservatism actually means within a legal framework. And that is not to say that what they're doing is strictly illegal. It's, in our opinion, unethical. But again, they're working within a legal framework. And, like, not to bring it back to fascism, not saying this is fascism, it is adjacent to it in a way, but like, this is how tyranny becomes itself. It's how it manifests. You have one party, one group of people, and it's not even like it's a whole party. It's not like all Republicans got together and made this decision. This was the NCGOP. This was Republican insiders. This is businessmen and lawmakers and people within the legal system that are making these decisions and making these plans. Yep. And then when it comes time, right, these loyalists, these people that have been in the party structure, or they know somebody who knows somebody, or they've been an old family friend for 3 generations, that now when they have the chance, bing, bang, boom. You all get nice, cushy, little spoils system jobs. You're now on the board of elections. You're now on the board of education. We're going to appoint you to these positions. And also keep this in mind. The governor has a lot of authority on who he gets to appoint to certain positions. We're not just talking about board of elections now. For instance, the DA in my county recently announced that she's going to resign. Now, initially I thought, okay, does this mean that there's going to be a special election? No, this means that the governor gets to appoint who the next DA is going to be in that district. Can you guess where their sights might be set on next? If they're not already going to try and do that with another bill.
Let me guess.
You get rid of the local level DAs and the local level judicial system, you're in trouble. If you take away the power of the governor, who was duly elected to do the job that he was going to run on doing, and you take that power of appointment away from the governor and give it to the state auditor, who has like 200 followers on TikTok, or not TikTok, who has like 200 followers on Twitter. Not that that means anything, but like nobody knows who this fucking guy is.
No, they don't.
I think that's what I'm getting at. It's not about the followers. It's that nobody knows who he is, except for the people who follow politics. Does that not alarm you at all?
Oh yeah, no, it's very alarming. But I will say,
not you specifically, but you, listener, yell through your screen and let me know that this alarms you.
Next week you're going to be out on the street just walking, and someone will like run up to you and be like, "This alarms me." But no, it is very alarming though. And it's one thing that I don't think people are talking about a lot yet, because this story is just like really kind of breaking.
Yeah, this was also late last night that this was decided, and then early this morning he was appointing people already.
Like, this could also have some effect on the whole Jefferson Griffin Ellison Riggs thing.
Potentially.
You know, and that's not just me saying that, like, that's Stein saying that.
Yeah.
Saying that he feared the appointment changes would mean Republicans could succeed in helping Griffin win the seat.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, earlier today, on my lunch break, I decided to walk over to the North Carolina Science Museum, you know, because if y'all have never been, it's here in Raleigh. It's a really cool place, really neat.
Yeah. And
one thing I love, there's just something about it. I cannot place what it is. Whenever I walk in there, I'm just like really happy. Maybe it's just because I'm a nerd. I don't know. But
yes,
you know, they talk about, you know, just all the, you know, natural resources and the various types of environments and climates and whatnot that we have in this state. And it makes me think about, you know, the state as a whole, what it means, what it stands for. And, you know, I'm thinking about just all the various things. And then, you know, it's a little happy place. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm just like, fucking Republicans are kind of messing it all up. No, like, no, I'm just like, you know, this is a state that I absolutely love for its natural beauty, its resources, for the people here, right? Whether or not I agree with them or not, whether or not our politics align or not.
Sure.
But, you know, they are not being represented like they should be. They are not having their rights maintained and protected and expanded like they should be. You know, like every generation of lawmaker is a custodian and a guardian of the democracy and the people who elected them there to their positions.
Yeah.
And who we have now, at least on the Republican side, are failing in their mission dramatically. And it's not because they are inept or they just don't have the ability or know-how. It's because they don't want to.
Right.
It's because they do not care about what they have been, you know, what duty has been bestowed upon them.
And if
they only care about their own power.
Yes. And if I may add to it a little bit, they don't even feel as though they have the obligation to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you're saying they don't want to. I'm saying yes, and they don't feel they have the obligation to.
That's true. Yeah.
No, I don't need to meet with constituents. No, I don't need to actually adhere to what the majority of the population in the state wants.
Because, like, why would I need to meet with the constituents? Why would I need to adhere to, you know, or again, small d democratic values whenever the party that I'm a part of, the Republican Party, has drawn the maps and have gerrymandered the state all to hell? I never had to worry about losing power as long as my party is in control. So why should I give a shit about what my constituents have to say? Why should I meet with them?
Right. And it's a tenuous situation because, kind of like what Chaz was saying earlier, it's not as if they're never going to get to a point where it's so overwhelmingly Republican or conservative in this state that Democrats just have absolutely no power. No matter how badly you cut up the maps, you're not going to make us Oklahoma. Like, that's just not going to happen because there are far too many people in this state. There are too many big cities. There's too much diversity. And I'm not saying that those are the hallmarks of Democrats, but they certainly seem to be what we flock to, right? They certainly seem to be what liberals and leftists and people who have more democratic, more liberal values, that tends to be where we are. And when you have a population that is screaming for help, both with like housing, the costs of goods and services going way beyond what we're able to actually pay for, the wages stagnating, the excruciatingly low teacher pay, the inability for us to get good health care in a place that is known for having the medical research triangle in its state. There's so many things in this state that, like you're saying, it is a beautiful place. There's a reason that I want to be here, but there's also a reason that we have so much work to do to fix it.
Yeah.
Because like this should be a place that people want to come to, and right now there's not a whole lot of reason to, because of the way that we are being treated by our governing body. And I say we, I mean we, as in everybody. Republicans in Western North Carolina, this is not good for you. Conservative unaffiliateds in Eastern North Carolina, this is not good for you. This will not work out well, because the only people that they are doing this for is themselves, is the party, the NCGOP. That is all they care about. And their majority slipped. Atlas shrugged this last cycle, to bring it back around to like libertarianism, right? to stalwart conservatism, to ascetic libertarianism, right?
Anytime I hear Atlas Shrugged, or I hear Ayn Rand, or anything like that, just those words, I freeze and mentally prepare myself to hear the most inane, absurd bullshit ever.
Well, I mean...
And I look for ways to escape whatever room I'm in, even if it's just through a window on the 30th floor. I love the idiom, I guess, of Atlas Shrugged, because that I think is apt in this scenario. That for a few years we've seen this Republican supermajority and the power that they've been able to wield, the things that they've been able to do. It seems imposing and almost unbeatable in certain instances, right? Well, we'll never win that seat. Oh, we'll never be able to overcome that vote majority, right? Like we say a lot, politics is fluid, nothing's set in stone. Like Chaz said earlier, we go through many different waves where you think that for one moment, oh man, they've just got this shit on lock. And then 2 years later, everything flips on its head for one reason or another. Am I saying that's going to happen here? No, it probably won't. But again, that 2-seat loss in 2024, that's not nothing. And it's, again, Atlas Shrugged. He lost the step. And to push the analogy even further, there's a reason that we remember the gods of Olympus and not the Titans. And with that, to end it on talks of deities, which we will not get into on this show, I promise you. I'm not going to go on TikTok and start debating atheists and agnostics and Christians. Oh, you don't want to talk to Ken Ham?
I really don't. You know, I think I'm good, honestly. We thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with the Honorable Chaz Beasley, and I hope you'll stick around for more interviews that I am sure that we are going to be conducting in the next few weeks. We've got one lined up that we are very, very excited about, and you should be too. We can't announce who it is right this second, but if you follow us on our Blue Sky and Twitter and all those places, and if you check us out on Substack, we will be able to give you updates about it. We may also post it on our Patreon early if you would like to go there and support the channel. That would be amazing of you, dear listener. CJ, you got anything else to say to the people listening right now?
Just one thing really quick. So, last week's episode was episode number 10, and Adrian and I were talking earlier, and we're like, 10 felt pretty good, not gonna lie. It has definitely been a learning process for us so far. So I just want to say to those who were there from the beginning, thank you, but for those who have kind of kept on listening, we really do appreciate it. We know that the podcast is starting to grow and whatnot, and we are both excited. At least I'm just assuming Adrian is. We are both excited. No, but thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you, and we hope you tune in next time. Follow us on TikTok, follow us on Instagram, all those places, and we'll see you next time on the Left of Old North. Bye-bye.